Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lawcast. This week, the March to WrestleMania concludes for 2020 as we cover one of the great WrestleManias of all time. It's the night we said farewell to the legendary Ric Flair. It's the night Floyd Mayweather proved he could be a wrestler and not just a boxer. It's one of the great WrestleManias of all time. It's WrestleMania 24, the biggest WrestleMania under the sun. Hughes, how great was it to revisit this one?
Oh, it was absolutely phenomenal to revisit this one. This may have had the best atmosphere of any WrestleMania ever, other than 9. Um, and I got to tell you guys, like when we originally plotted this out, we were planning on stopping at WrestleMania 23. Like that's where we plotted it out to. And part of the reason we decided to do 24 is A, because we wound up having time after they delayed all of WrestleMania, but B, we just didn't really want to end on a down note like that. This is the perfect, wonderful, beautiful, amazing note to end on. This show is great.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the atmosphere because, this is the first outdoor WrestleMania since WrestleMania 9, and it was an incredible just change. Obviously, they'd done a bunch of indoor stadium WrestleManias. WrestleMania feels so much bigger when it's outside.
And like that first shot you get when the show starts up, and it's outside and the wind's blowing through the palm trees outside of the stadium, and it's like raining a little bit.
It was an overcast day. Like it had definitely rained earlier in the day.
Like I remember there was genuine concern that it was going to rain out WrestleMania. Yeah. So they built that like little set over the ring so it would block the rain out. And like it just looks mammoth and cool. And like just looking at it, I don't think there had been another one since 17 that I looked at and was like, man, I fucking wish I was there.
Yeah.
It looks like so fun.
I love the set with all the other thing about this is the Citrus Bowl is a total dump, or at least was back then. I think they've renovated it, but like was a total dump, and like they just dressed it up. Like one of the best jobs their production team has ever done to get all the palm trees up and make this place look big time. The other thing they had was because it was outdoors, and there's a lake like right behind the stadium. They parked boats in the lake and shot pyro from there. So like when Taker does his entrance, they've got the flames shooting like 100 feet in the air. When Edge does his entrance, they've got the fireworks all the way in the air behind him. It's an incredible show.
Oh man, that iconic shot of Flair walking down the ring and the fireworks just all above him in the air is like, that is one of the many things that contributes to how emotional that whole thing's going to be when we start talking about that. But this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And like, it's not a surprise that they've gone to more outdoor shows after this. I know San Francisco, they did outdoors. Yeah. I don't know how many they've done.
Yeah, San Francisco, New York, Miami, and then they were back in Orlando. For WrestleMania 33. That's the other thing. This was the first WrestleMania in Florida, right? And then they've been in Florida like every other year since then. It's become kind of their home base.
This was an important WrestleMania for a lot of reasons. I don't know when officially the whole WrestleMania weekend thing started with indie shows.
It feels like this year was the big coming out because so many of the indies are based in Florida.
That was the thing, is that I don't think that they realized how important Florida was going to be to them. But everything sort of comes together to make this such a perfect thing. They completely revitalized the Citrus Bowl. It's this perfect thing. And also, the town is basically just so thankful to have them that they just give them the run of the whole fucking town. Like every bar in town is like WWE themed for a whole month. All of the tourism is based around WrestleMania. Every hotel in the area is just booked completely up with wrestling fans coming from all over the world. And every small venue, other wrestling shows come because like Orlando's just like thirsty for wrestling business. So it like overnight creates this entire secondary economy of wrestling, which is the WrestleMania weekend.
I think this is the first time the city like really rolled out the red carpet for them. Before this, they'd gotten to the point where like they were getting deals on the stadium and whatnot. This is the first time like I think the city like waived all the local taxes and like, the kind of like the Orlando city government and the state government in Florida like were really aggressively pursuing this. And this is the beginning of WWE's relationship with Florida. FCW had launched the previous fall, which is the other kind of big development here, that they've set up their developmental territory in Florida. This is when there were the rumors that they were going to like build a physical Hall of Fame building, and that it would be down in Orlando, which is still something we hear kicked around once in a while. I think they've kind of realized that's not going to do enough business to sustain itself.
Yeah, I think that rumor was just the Performance Center is what they were hearing about, and they didn't really realize what it was that was going to be, because who would have predicted that they were actually going to build what they build? But yeah, this is just such a history-making WrestleMania for so many reasons. Like you said, it basically sets the tone for every WrestleMania from here on out, because they're like, oh, we don't have to bid on shit. People will come to us. If we do it in like airport hubs like they do here, then 100,000 people can show up, and just the whole city can bring us money for the entirety of the weekend. When WrestleMania is in a city now, they don't just make money at the show. The whole weekend, they're just money's pouring into their pockets. It's incredible.
Yeah. Hall of Fame, NXT, Raw the next night, SmackDown back when SmackDown was on Tuesday, SmackDown on Tuesday. Like, yeah, I mean, they've built it into a multi-million-dollar event now that lasts, 5 days. And it's huge for wrestling as a whole. I mean, for most indies, as we've said, that's kind of their year, is their WrestleMania. Yeah. That's the biggest show of every indies year, is their WrestleMania weekend show.
It's actually fascinating. Like, a lot of careers were made because of those shows. Because a lot of people, you have 100,000 wrestling fans in town.
Yeah, including, both media-wise, like the Dave Meltzers and Wade Kellers of the world, and like, William Regal and Triple H and guys who work for The Office are going around to these shows to scout talent.
Oh, yeah.
Size guys up.
And it's so funny because, like, look at a guy like Joey Janela, for example, who made his name specifically because of his shows on WrestleMania weekend. Like, he's now working for a major promotion because of that shit. Like, it can't be overstated. Like, this is the most important development in indie wrestling since indie wrestling became a thing.
Yeah. So that's a really fascinating kind of backdrop to this WrestleMania, is how important it is for WWE's future and wrestling's future. But a lot of this show was about honoring wrestling's past, in the sense that, it's the end of the road for Ric Flair, the end of his legendary career, at least in WWE. I know he ended up wrestling a little more after this. Wish he hadn't, but at least WWE had him honor his retirement stipulation, and he never did another match for them after this. I mean, this has been years coming. Like, Jim Herd thought Flair was too old all the way back in 1990. Like, we're almost 20 years removed from that, and he was still wrestling at this point. It looked like his career was over. Like, when WCW folded, I think he thought he was done at that point, and Triple H kind of coaxed him back into the ring, and they managed to get the Nature Boy magic back. But by this point, he was nearly 60 years old, and it was definitely getting to the end of the line for him. He could still put on a show, but he was very limited physically at this point. I think Vince just sort of drew a line and said, it's time for Flair to retire. Oddly, kind of around the same time, he also made, with much less fanfare, made Fit Finlay retire. I think a year after this, he just said Finlay's too old, no more. But I think the right call with Flair. I'm glad they gave him a strong, dignified exit here.
Yeah, it would have been very easy for Flair to go out in an unfortunate kind of way. Thank God that they did this. And it's just funny because if Flair never comes back for his second chapter with WWE, his legacy is so odd.
Yeah.
Because those last 5 years in WCW, all they did was just chip away at his legacy and humiliate him. So I don't think that we remember him as fondly and as legendarily as we do if he doesn't come back for this run. Triple H saves him.
It's funny how important that last act is. We've talked about Goldberg kind of the same way, how big it is that Goldberg's had this second act of his career and how much that added to his legacy. The last thing you do is, at least the last big thing, because as we've said, Flair's actual last match was some shit in TNA, probably some 6-man tag match, but who cares about that? The last thing we really remember is this at WrestleMania, and this was a perfect way to go out. And, Shawn Michaels got a very similar send off a few years after this, and I'll just argue always that when wrestlers reach a certain age, legendary wrestlers, the company needs to make an exit strategy for them. Like a couple of years ago, they should have sat down and like plotted out the end of the Undertaker's career. Like, what are going to be his last couple matches, and how are we really going to pay that off? Because instead, it's starting to look like his last match could just be some random thing he does in Saudi Arabia.
Which is definitely a shame, because you really do feel like they have a couple of times come up with that. Like, this is what I think that the end of the Undertaker is going to be, and then they just can't stick to it. They just can't keep their hand away from the money pile, you know?
No, they always want him as an attraction, and he's always with. Yeah, I mean, like, hard for him to turn down $1 million match. Like, I get that.
If anything, what the Undertaker has proven is that he and like Kevin Nash are like ultimate soul brothers that are just like, who gives a shit? It's all a work. Give me that check, brother.
Yeah. So there were a couple ideas I've heard for like how they were going to end Flair's career. One was that like he would announce his retirement a year in advance, so they would get to do a farewell tour, and like each time, you know, Ric Flair's last time in Charlotte, Ric Flair's last time at Madison Square Garden, and so forth. I think that would have been I think that would have been a solid way to go with this.
I definitely think it would have been a solid way to go with it. I think that Flair probably would have appreciated that a lot too. I don't know. The problem is that you have to get matches out of that. And like, yeah. I don't think Flair had like 5 more big time matches left in him.
Yeah, probably fair. Another idea was he would self-impose a stipulation that if he didn't win the world title by a certain date, he would retire.
Now that's interesting.
Basically, he would probably say, if I don't win the title by WrestleMania, I'll retire.
I think we had all heard, there was a rumor floating around at the time that they were kicking around a storyline that was literally going to be like Flair versus Orton.
Yeah.
And like that was how he was going to retire.
That was, Orton. I mean, that's what I've said I would have booked. I think I would have had Flair win the Royal Rumble. Like with this, especially with the way they ended up going, that like if he lost a match, he has to retire. Imagine if he comes out in the Royal Rumble and the announcers are like, is he crazy? If he gets thrown out here, he's retired. But he ends up managing to win by a miracle. And he goes to WrestleMania to face Orton. And he's all in. He's either going to win the title or his career is over. If he can't be the world champion, he's not the Nature Boy anymore, and he'll retire. And you know Flair would have loved to put over Orton. Like, you know he would have loved getting to put Randy over in his last match.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, too, is that, like, it feels, while this match is amazing and it's such a great send-off, it'll always feel weird that it was Michaels.
Because he has no relationship with Shawn on screen. Like the only thing they've ever done is feud with each other when, you know, Shawn was feuding with Evolution. Like that's not a relationship on screen.
Yeah, and so many people do have a relationship on screen with him.
Made all the sense in the world.
That's what I was about to say. Triple H retiring, you can do this a whole storyline, point for point, exactly the same with Triple H instead. Because Triple H is a babyface now.
It does, and it makes more sense. And yeah, I mean, we'll get to how they kind of built Shawn and Flair. I think there's one thing they could have done with the build there's like 1 or 2 things they could have done with the build that would have made it better, but we'll get to that in a second. What they settled on is if he lost one match, he had to retire. So he came out on the Raw 15th anniversary special in December, and he started to cut a promo that sounded like he was announcing his retirement, but instead he announced he loves this business and he will never
retire.
Great line. And then Vince comes out and interrupts him and says, like, okay, you don't have to retire, but if you lose one more match, you're done. So they set that up. Now, my only issue with that is it meant he had to beat everybody for like the next couple months until WrestleMania, when it feels like he really should have been putting guys, like, he can't lose every match, but it feels like he should have been putting some people over instead of beating everybody.
Yeah, when he beats MVP clean at No Way Out, that's weird as fuck.
Yeah, it is. And then, yeah, the question came, who is going to retire him? I feel like the options were basically, Shawn was not the one that would have sprung to mind, but I think they knew that would have been they know that's going to be a great match. Like Triple H, I think, is the one he has that deep relationship with, and it makes all the sense in the world that he would have been the last one. And we've talked about the idea that him and Orton could fight for the title. I think that would have been inspired by, I believe Rocky Balboa had just come out.
Yes.
Yeah, which I think is what we heard. Like when this was being described in the dirt sheets, it was the idea is Ric Flair will do like a Rocky Balboa type storyline.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, too, I think The Wrestler had just come out.
I think that's after this.
Is it?
That's before WrestleMania 25, because that's when they were going to do Jericho New York, which is a hell of a story that we're going to get into next year.
Yeah, I was about to say, because that meant a lot to Flair too, but I couldn't remember if it tied in with this or not. Okay,
because he is part of that. Like he's the inspiration for he's the guy, the mouthpiece for the legends, basically because he couldn't wrestle again because he had done this retirement match. So they end up going in a very strange direction with that match that we'll cover next year.
Yeah, but the other good thing about this is, I mean, obviously Orton, Batista, and Triple H are the ones who you would normally associate with Ric Flair.
Yeah.
But thank God they didn't wind up going that direction, because since it's Shawn, then we segue into the unbelievably amazing Batista-Shawn Michaels feud.
Oh, yeah.
Which is...
You could have done with Triple H instead. But
you could have. And like that maybe even would have been more heated. Like, how the fuck dare you? He was your idol just like he was mine.
And I mean, it basically would have been the Batista Triple H feud from last year, 10 years early. But then they spun Shawn and Batista off into Shawn and Jericho, which is one of the best storylines they've ever done.
And literally, like, this year of Shawn Michaels' career may be the best year of his whole fucking career.
It really is.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. The career he had, but yeah, when you look at the stuff he did this year and the springboard it provides for the last couple of years of his career, and down the road they're still paying off like what begins here for years to come with the Undertaker's streak.
Oh, we're gonna get to that. Oh,
yeah.
If you haven't heard my unified theory of the 10-year storyline here, we're going to get to that. There's a lot to talk about. That
becomes WrestleMania for years, is the Undertaker's streak, and I think we can argue it starts right here with Shawn and Flair.
Absolutely.
So in storyline, Flair asked Michaels for the match at WrestleMania. He said, I want the honor of going toe-to-toe with the very best. Shawn is like, oh, I don't want to be the guy who retired Ric Flair. That's too much for me to carry. And Flair is kind of offended by his presumption that Shawn is going to beat him. And Flair says, if he can't beat the best in the world anymore, he doesn't want his career to go on. And Shawn agrees to do it. And things get heated when Shawn compares Flair to Old Yeller. Says he's a dog that needs to be put down, and Shawn's going to be the guy to do it.
And cuts a promo where for 5 minutes all he can say is, "Oh, Yeller, are you kidding me?" And then
just, Yeller! Yeah.
And then just slaps him in the face 100 times.
Okay, here's the one thing they didn't do that would have made this so much more heated. Flair should have just been like, yeah, you were great, but you were never as good as me.
Which, of course, is the only problem is that Michael says that himself at one point.
Shawn's too humble. But yeah, that would put some heat on it. Flair's just like, you were great. People always told me, oh, Shawn Michaels, he's the new Ric Flair. There was only ever one Ric Flair, daddy.
They say, on the list of everyone's list of the greatest wrestlers of all time, you're on every single one of them.
But you're
number two. Yep.
Yeah. And think of you could do these great. Think of all the people you could interview to talk about that. You could have Triple H in a sit-down interview. Who's better, Shawn Michaels or Ric Flair? Bret Hart.
Oh my God.
Who's better, Shawn Michaels or Ric? Well, Bret would just be like, I fucking hate them both. I was better than both of them.
I'm the best. What a bunch of jabronis.
Batista, or there's so many people you can have do. Steve Austin. There's so many people who can do interesting interviews about this. So yeah, that doesn't go on last, but that's what really should have closed this show. This show peaks with Flair's retirement, and it's tough sledding for everybody who has to follow that.
And the poor women, for the 10th year in a row, are in the death spot.
That is one of the worst death spots of all time.
Just the look on poor Beth Phoenix's face as she trudges to the ring yep, here we go.
But the match that received the most mainstream attention was The Big Show versus Floyd Mayweather. Huge coup for WWE that they're landing Floyd Mayweather really at his peak. Like, this is a year after he beat De La Hoya in what to that point was the biggest boxing pay-per-view of all time. Like, getting him at the perfect time here.
And this is one of the rare times where WWE really capitalizes on somebody's fame at like the perfect time. I had like just found out who Mayweather was like 6 months before this.
Okay, I had known about him for years and years, but that's because coincidentally we grew up in the same town.
Yeah. And like he was heralded as a phenomenal boxer, like one of a kind, one of the greatest of all time, like already by this point. But he hadn't really become like
no. He just hadn't had a huge fight until De La Hoya.
He hadn't become this like larger than life figure that he would become, and this is sort of on his way to do that. But like just as he's like putting that character together of like Money Mayweather, this is when he's
evolved from early in his career. He was Pretty Boy Floyd. This is when he's become Money Mayweather.
And it's just the funny thing is we're at a point in his career where he's the babyface here. They do this match 3 years later. There's no
he's the heel in this match.
But he's okay.
We'll talk about
that's complicated.
So when they started building this, he was the babyface, and then everybody booed him, and they kind of switched gears midway through the program and started portraying Big Show as the face because they kind of had to because the crowd was shitting on Mayweather because he's a heel. Like, it's a total heel character.
This is also the biggest.
He's a horrible person.
This is the biggest responsibility WWE has ever given the Big Show, and he knocks it out of the fucking park.
This is a career-altering match for him.
Like, he comes back, he's lost 50 pounds, he's in the best shape of his life, he incorporates all the boxing, and he just kills this.
Why do you think they chose the Big Show for this?
I think it was just the height disparity thing. I think they were having trouble figuring out someone for him to work with.
Yeah, who do you put him with other than the Big Show?
And from their perspective, it's got to be a heel. It's got to be somebody who can work with him.
Yeah.
It's got to be somebody. And here's the problem.
And who he can beat is the other thing. Is he's not going to beat Batista or Triple H.
Right.
And, I don't know how those matches work anyway.
But Big Show can eat the loss, and it doesn't matter. Plus, you can put that on the USA Today. It's just the tail of the tape, tiny Floyd versus big ass Big Show.
Yeah, it's something anybody can understand. Whereas if it's him and Batista, I think people look at Batista and they're like, who the fuck is that? But with the Big Show, they're like, oh my god, he's so big.
Exactly. And he's got a little bit of a name. He's not their biggest name, but he's got a little bit of a name. So it's the perfect storm.
Yeah, somebody casual fans remember him because he was big in the late 90s.
But nobody could have predicted that he would come out firing with promos and that unforgettable segment on Raw where Floyd opens his nose.
Oh, yeah. So Big Show returns from over a year-long absence at No Way Out. He's been gone since December to Dismember at the very end of 2006.
Wow.
He just comes out and he turns heel by attacking Rey Mysterio. And then Mysterio's friend, Floyd Mayweather, jumps the railing. I think the show was in Vegas, which is Mayweather's adopted hometown. Big Show kind of mocks him by kneeling down and squaring up. And then Mayweather hits him and legit breaks his nose.
Now, here's some fun things about that. First of all, Mayweather comes flying over the railing when it's his moment because he's so amped up. He jumps probably 7 feet in the air. He gets... And then he rushes into the ring, and Big Show had apparently told him backstage, hit me with live rounds. Otherwise, it's going to look fucking stupid.
God, that's ballsy.
And, Mayweather is not, a bare hands boxer.
No.
So, I would have been genuinely concerned for, him breaking his fists on Big Show's face doing this. But, he hits him with 3 punches so fucking fast.
Yeah.
That, even the Big Show seems stunned.
Yeah, he was probably woozy. He got punched in the face 3 times by a professional boxer with no protection.
And literally, Big Show's nose explodes.
The image of him, groggy and, chasing Mayweather backstage is, something else.
And, apparently he was a little groggy, and he was genuinely mad. So,
sure.
Floyd's people, like, some of them are too slow to get backstage, and Big Show, like, punches them in the face.
Yeah. So coming out of that, they were initially like portraying Mayweather as the face and Big Show as the heel, but like the live crowds were just shitting on Mayweather. You know, he's the outsider. He's a dickish character. Like, totally makes sense.
The Money Mayweather character, if you're not familiar with it, which seems impossible because he's one of the most famous athletes in the world at this point, but let's say for posterity, the Money Mayweather character is the most pretentious douchebag you can possibly imagine. A guy who, like, pretends to answer cell phone calls on stacks of $100 bills. A guy...
Yeah, just has massive stacks of cash, like, laying around his house.
A guy who gambles $250,000 on random regular season college basketball games. Like, just flagrantly throwing his money in the garbage. But it doesn't matter because he's so talented that he can just make more.
Yeah. I think this was another Shane McMahon project, and like Shane became involved in it on screen. Like when they did the weigh-in and like when they did the press conference, Shane was there. What is it with Shane McMahon and like boxing and MMA and like anytime there's like a needed bridge into that world, it's always Shane.
I've always thought that Shane McMahon hates WWE wrestling so much because he seems so fascinated with everything that's like WWE but is not WWE.
Do you think Shane is just an Enochiist at heart?
Oh my God. I don't want to imagine that. But I just think that he thinks that the product is pretty boring and PG and stale. And like Shane's one of those edgelords who's just like, give me ECW and UFC.
That's always his thing, is he was always, I think, the big picture guy. Whereas I think Stephanie is very like small, meticulous, like how do we make this segment 10% better? Like Shane is always the guy who has an idea to reinvent everything.
This is a very simplistic way of putting it, but it's almost like the two sides of Vince split into two different people.
Yeah, because no one person can be Vince McMahon. It's just too much.
Which is funny, because you always imagine that like Shane and Stephanie would work together for the new generation, and that has never been the case.
You know, siblings.
Yeah, I mean, but they've never even tried it. Like, Shane and Steph will
This is right about the time Shane exits. I mean, he's around for about a year after this, and then adios.
Because it's so clear that it's Stephanie's company, which is even funnier because now it's not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the other thing is, I mean, I think a woman is not going to run WWE because wrestling is sexist. When Triple H becomes part of the family, that's when Shane can be safely pushed to the side.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about that. That's a deeply, deeply depressing truth that you've just exposed.
So there was an incident during the weigh-in segment on Raw where like some of Mayweather's entourage got stiff with the wrestlers and like it turned into a real brawl.
Yeah, they were talking all kinds of shit about how they were like legit tough guys and not fake like the wrestlers. And the wrestlers did not take kindly to that.
Hardcore Holly just beat all their asses.
Well, that's the funny thing is that like there are certain people that you'd maybe want to bring to that situation that'd be like, all right, they're legitimate tough guys, but they'll protect the business, but they won't like go overboard. But if you bring Hardcore Holly to that, you're just asking for him to just beat the shit out of somebody to protect
walk-in lawsuit.
I would just have loved it so much if like Holly takes a swing at Mayweather, just like, fuck it, I beat Mayweather. You can call me Hardcore Money.
Yeah, this build was just full of stuff like that just felt a little out of control because it actually was.
But that's good.
That's great.
Because it lends this whole thing this like chaotic air. Because the big thing too is that like we haven't had a non-wrestler like this is probably the biggest role other than LT that a non-wrestler has ever had in a match. Like that they were literally just going to have a non-wrestler.
Like Mr. T.
Yeah, but it was much more limited what they were going to have to do.
Match, yeah.
This is a singles match.
Yeah.
Where he's literally going to have a wrestling match with the Big Show. None of us had any idea what it was going to look like. So like the chaotic build only added to the idea of like, what the fuck is going to happen when this match starts? Most of us thought it was going to be a disaster.
Yep. Yeah, we heard that they spent a lot of time training for it. I think Triple H was heavily involved in like laying it out, and Big Show ends up Mayweather holds his own, but like we'll get to it. Big Show is the one who carries the match. Like he's the star of the match by far.
Yeah. I remember being very worried that like Mayweather like wouldn't do business and like wouldn't like be like down to like look foolish or take any bumps or anything like that. That's not what happens. Like he's 100% a professional.
He was doing it one way or the other is the thing.
Yes, exactly. But like he does a good job. But like you said, this is all Big Show. Like this Big Show gets into the Hall of Fame because of this match. That's how much this turns his career around. He becomes a WWE legend here.
He definitely gets put in that Edge Cena match the year after this, like because of this. Like that was, I think, definitely a thank you to him.
Which is a disaster, and I very much wish it hadn't happened.
Okay, so to get into the show, it's Sunday, April 30th, 2008, at the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, Florida. Announced attendance is 74,635. That's exaggerated, but the stadium was definitely sold out.
Oh, yeah. Like, people were packed to the rafters.
Yeah. Gate is 5.84 million, which is a new record. For comparison, when they came back to Orlando in whenever that was, 2017, I think the gate was like 16 million, is how much WrestleMania ticket prices have changed.
But this is the first year that I remember hearing since like 20 that it was hard to get tickets. Like, literally, like, they sold out immediately, and like it was people. There was like actually like a lot of scalper activity going on. Like this was a difficult show to get to.
Yeah, because I mean, it's just, again, it's destination. It's Orlando instead of Detroit. Like people were coming in from all over the world for this.
I think they estimated that like 10,000 people showed up from all over the world for the show who didn't even go to the show. They were just in town.
About it. I've always thought about that, like going to WrestleMania, and even if I didn't get to go to the show, just doing stuff around town, and then like watching it at my hotel or at a bar or a club or something.
Yeah, apparently like all the bars around like just set up like watching parties.
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
If you can get away with charging people to get in, like fuck yeah, that's worth it.
I mean, that's the thing.
Is it Sunday night? What other business are you doing?
And that's the magic of this particular show, is that like that environment. The crowd seems really special here. They seem really amped up. They're on board for absolutely everything. Like the environment, the atmosphere is amazing, but also it just everything about this just feels special and not canned, if that makes sense. In a way that the last couple WrestleManias have been. This just feels like a completely unique experience. Even now that they've been trying to copy it for years, they never have managed it.
No. On commentary, we've got the Raw team of Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, the SmackDown team of Michael Cole and Jonathan Coachman, and ECW team of Joey Styles and Taz. Cole and Coach. So JBL has gone back to wrestling, and they replaced him with Coach. And like right after this show, they get Mick Foley to come in for a couple months, and he does a great job, but he doesn't like Vince yelling at him, so he quits.
I don't know. I wonder if people remember how good Michael Cole and Mick Foley were as a team.
Of course, Mick Foley was great at this. Like, of course he was.
Just like everything he said was so endearing and like right on board, and like he put over people so much.
Yeah, he can do everything because he can do intense, he can do funny, like he can do any angle of it. Like he's a perfect commentator.
He's great at like off the cuff one-liners. Like he's exactly what you want. He's a lovable guy in general. You just like hearing his voice. If he could have just like replaced in that Lawler role, that would have been brilliant. But Vince has to emotionally break down everybody who sits at the desk, so he couldn't take it.
That is like the number one, I think, criteria to be able to do that job, is to be able to take Vince's abuse.
And that's why only 2 men have ever successfully been able to do it for more than a year at a time.
Yeah. Dark match. Kane won a battle royal to become the number one contender for the ECW championship.
Is this the first in like the long line of WrestleMania battle royals? Like, is it like a battle royal every year after this?
No, actually, you know what the dark match the year after this is? It's where they unified the tag titles. They ended up doing it on the dark. Yeah, Miz and Morrison against Carlito and Primo for all the tag belts was on the pre-show or on the dark match.
Show.
I don't even think it was I don't even think it was televised. I don't think they were doing pre-shows at that point. I think it was a dark match.
What a horrible slap in the face to history.
Yes. Yes. Like the legacy of those tag titles, which they've now like demolished.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay. This is filled with just a whole bunch of fucking jabronis. Though, notably, it has some people, like Kofi Kingston is in that, Cody Rhodes is in that.
ECW, yeah, Cody wasn't on ECW, but they just threw some other guys in there too. But yeah, would you like to hear me read these names in the Vince McMahon voice?
You know that's my favorite part of these WrestleMania shows, dude. Come on, let's go.
An unknown number of superstars compete to become number one contender for the ECW championship, including the Big Red Machine, Kane, Deuce, Domino, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Stevie Richards, Elijah Burke, The Miz, Shannon Moore, Jimmy Wang Yang, Jesse, Trevor Murdoch, Festus, The Brian Kendrick, Lance Cade, the Jamaican sensation Kofi Kingston, Cody Rhodes, Jamie Noble, Chuck Palumbo, the Great Khali, Hardcore Holly, Tommy Dreamer, Snitsky, the world's strongest man Mark Henry, and Val Venus.
Thank you for that. Poor Val Venus, who...
How is Val Venus still employed?
At this point,
2008.
He's just the guy putting over new people in dark matches.
Yeah, he's the guy that's their measuring stick is if you can't have a match with Val Venus, you can't work at this company.
Yep. They've just always had that guy. I don't know who it is these days, but there's somebody there.
We cut into the show. We get a flyover, which is a WrestleMania first because this is only the second WrestleMania to be outdoors. It's an overcast day in Orlando. Looks like there was a little rain, but it's cleared up by showtime. John Legend performs America the Beautiful. That was a strong get.
Knocks it out of the fucking park, too. Yeah. And just like the visual of him with a piano at the top of this big, beautiful ramp in front of this big, gorgeous set. Like doing America the Beautiful in the rain is just it redefines what you think WrestleMania could be. Like that's not something that had been an option before.
How do you describe this set? It's massive and it has lots of palm trees on it.
Here's the beautiful thing about it is that it's gigantic, but it's simple. Yeah. So it's like one massive pillar right in the middle that has like WrestleMania down it. There's like one like little stock ticker type thing that they do like little details on, including an actual stock ticker when JBL comes out. And then it's just like two big video screens on either side. And that's it. It doesn't need any more ornamentation than that. So it's gigantic and interesting and like visually appealing, but it's not just 85 screens placed haphazardly everywhere showing different shit. Whoever the design team was that renovated this place and turned it into this deserve whatever kind of award you can give them for this.
Yeah, this is such a good set.
It looks beautiful, but it's simple. The whole setup rigging over the ring.
Yeah, the canopy was, for one, necessity in case it rained. Like, you can't have the ring be rained in and slippery because guys will get hurt. But yeah, the canopy adds a ton to it. I love that the canopy is like 4 palm trees. Yeah.
Yeah, they make it look good, but they also make it in such a way that it's not obstructive to the crowd and it's not obstructive to the wrestlers. And they light the underneath of it so that even when it's dark outside, the inside of the ring is so much better lit even than it is during the indoor shows.
Yeah.
It's genius. Like I can't say enough about how awesome a job they did.
Then we get the opening package where each guy talks about how much WrestleMania means to them, and then it shifts to like recapping everything that's happened in the past year, which I loved because it was just like there was a long build to this show with like Taker was the champion, then Edge fucked him out of the belt, and then like Cena was the champion and he got hurt wrestling Orton, and now he's back to get the title from Orton. Like I loved the look what's happened in the last year part of this.
I feel like we just keep going back and forth between WrestleManias that have like 9 months of build in every single match and WrestleManias with zero build.
Yeah. We get the pyro and the welcome to the show, and then we've got our opening match, which is a Belfast brawl as Finlay takes on JBL. A lot of backstory to this match.
A lot of stupid fucking backstory.
Okay. Where do we begin? Vince McMahon died.
Yep, that's the start.
Vince McMahon went into a fit of darkness after having his head shaved by Lashley and then losing his coveted ECW title, and got in his limo and the limo exploded.
We never found out where exactly that was going, because then Chris Benoit happened.
Chris Benoit actually killed his wife and his son and himself. So had to drop the Vince is dead storyline. Where was that going? We don't really know, other than Ken Kennedy was going to be involved in a prominent role.
Yes, I don't remember if it was going to be Ken Kennedy who killed him, or like
he was going to have faked his death, and Kennedy was going to have been the accomplice. Like I don't know how they were going to, unless Kennedy was, what they transitioned to when Vince was revealed to be alive. They instead went to Vince has an illegitimate son, which was also a very intriguing storyline. And
I also feel like that was going to be part of the original storyline. Yes. I still think Kennedy was going to be his illegitimate son. Yeah,
like Vince feels like my family's abandoned me. The only one who actually cares about me is my son, Ken.
How amazing is it? This entire thing gets planted in Vince's head. Because when they're going to call up Kennedy from OVW, his name was Mr. Anderson, Ken Anderson.
And they didn't like that.
Because,
for some reason.
Because the whole catchphrase is because of the Matrix. Like, I'm Mr. Anderson.
Okay, yeah.
Okay? Vince didn't get the reference.
Matrix, yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, he's like, come up with another name. And so to kiss his ass, they come up with
Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman is like, Vince will love it if it's Ken Kennedy, because A, it's Irish, and B, it's Vince's middle name.
And they take it to Vince, and Vince is like, I love it.
Love it, yeah.
And he loves it so much that this idea gets planted in the back of his head. It's like, what if he was my son?
Yeah.
Just because of a coincidence with his name.
He's blonde like Vince kind of is. Like,
you can see it.
Yeah.
Like, if he had been in that role, it would have made total sense.
Yeah. So that was going to be a huge storyline where, like, Kennedy is going to be, like, the heir to Vince's fortune and running WWE. And, like, he's going to feud with Shane, and he's going to feud with Triple H. Like, he's got the keys to the kingdom, and then Kennedy flunks a drug test. Well, he doesn't actually fail a drug test. He gets named in the Sports Illustrated article that named all the guys getting steroids from the sketchy pharmacy.
And a lot of the ones that are named are big names already and can't
Edge,
really be
Orton,
punished.
Booker. But yeah, coincidentally, like a bunch of these guys, like Edge was hurt at the time. I think Orton was hurt, or something else was going on with Orton. Like Booker, I think, was already on his way out of the company anyway. So like the heat just kind of fell on Kennedy.
And it's just one of like a long line of things that just coincidentally fucks Kennedy over.
Yeah, so if you think about the opportunities Kennedy had here, like he was going to cash in Money in the Bank and beat The Undertaker for the title, but he had a misdiagnosed injury that turned out to not be serious, but they thought it was going to need surgery, so they had Edge do that instead. And then he was going to be Vince's accomplice in the Vince is dead storyline, and he couldn't do that because they had to drop that. And then he was going to be Vince's son, and he got caught with steroids at the worst possible time.
Okay, so let's try to work through the frame of mind Vince McMahon, the real person, is, as this gigantic storyline, this brand new bold direction for the company he was planning falls to the wayside. And instead he's like, we're still going to do the illegitimate son storyline. And everyone's like, all right, well, who's your son going to be? I don't know. So they keep running this storyline and have no idea who it actually is going to be.
Yeah.
Which is madness.
No, like, could just drop it.
Instead, they just keep pumping it up more and more. And
yeah.
we finally get to the segment.
Yeah, where nonsensically they slowly reveal clues about the person, and all the male wrestlers on the Raw roster leave the ring as it's revealed that it's not them. And it comes down to it's just Vince and Triple H in the ring. Okay, and we think it's Triple H.
Real quick before that, though, is the funniest thing ever. Because the Sandman forgets his cue. And so it's just Triple H, the Sandman, and Vince in the ring. And, like, other than the one cue that was supposed to eliminate him, all of the clues also somehow refer to the Sandman.
I think if I remember the clues correctly, it was like, he's been a champion, he has blonde hair, and he loves to play the game.
And, like, literally, like, Sandman standing there, and the crowd starts going nuts for Sandman. Like, what an amazing twist that would have been.
The thought of Vince trying to civilize Sandman as his son is actually hilarious.
Like, that's the comedy they thought they were trying to do with Hornswoggle. My God, they should have done it with Sandman. Holy shit. And he deserved it. He'd been working his ass off.
But instead they reveal that Hornswoggle is Vince's son, which leads to some of the worst TV ever.
Like, I almost can't even... Clearly Vince was like, all right, look, if we can't do this for real, let's just make a joke out of it. But, like, there's other people on this roster, right? Like, you could have done this push with somebody else.
I mean, off the top of my head, you could have... The whole, like, he has a son thing could have been, it's Triple H, his son-in-law. They reveal that Triple H and Stephanie are married, and Triple H turns heel, and, like, they do the Authority.
I mean, you could have revealed... You could have had it just be like somebody else, like just have it be like Orton or some shit, and just be like, no,
some debut-in wrestler if they had somebody like in the pipeline. Sheamus isn't like quite there yet.
And there's a total cop-out where you can just be like, no, he was actually just manipulating this whole thing just to get his foot in the door.
Yeah.
It makes total sense. Like, it's no different than what this is. This is a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, what the dumb stuff, like, Hornswoggle having to wrestle Khali, like, Hornswoggle running from Carlito and running through a Looney Tunes painted hole in the wall, like, truly some of the most dire stuff ever, and it's taking up multiple segments on every single show.
And, like, they can't decide what tone to take with it. So, like, one week Vince will be, like, trying to be, like, a genuinely concerned father to Hornswoggle, who, like, tries to protect him, and then the next week he'll be like, I want you to die!
Yeah. So this takes a turn when, was it Vince and Hornswoggle are supposed to have a cage match?
Yes.
And then JBL shows up and just beats the shit out of Hornswoggle in a very uncomfortable segment.
And we have to say this, Finlay and Hornswoggle had already been entrenched as an act together.
For years.
Yes. So, like, Finlay's just off on the side this whole time because Finlay's still attached to Hornswoggle, but now Hornswoggle's involved in this totally other fucking bullshit.
Yeah. JBL then does like an expositionary promo where he reveals that it's all been a lie and Hornswoggle is actually Finlay's son. I don't know how he was supposed to have found that out.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense how if Hornswoggle took a DNA test, it would indicate that Vince was his dad. And
that was all just a lie that, like, Vince's family and Finlay had concocted to teach Vince a lesson, was what was explained.
And, like, Finlay just kind of being there it's very, very straight. It was obviously just a way to get out of this.
Yeah.
And takes like some kind of heat from it. And JBL gets heat because in that cage match, he literally brutalizes Hornswoggle.
Yeah, he's like throwing him into the cage. Hornswoggle blades. Like, it is a vicious beat. Like, Hornswoggle's basically been portrayed as a child throughout this.
Yes.
Like, so basically, JBL's beating up a little kid.
And like Finley's literally handcuffed to the ropes, watching his son get murdered. We don't know he's his son at the time, but their relationship is very much father and son.
Yeah. So this is a Belfast brawl between Finley and JBL, and Vince is nowhere to be seen in any of this. He's just removed himself from the storyline.
Probably for the best.
Yeah. Man, the Vince McMahon character gets really, really, really weird in these years. McMahon's Millions is coming this summer.
Oh, God. I can't even believe that some of this stuff ever happened.
Yeah. There's lots of weapons shots. Finley uses his shillelagh. JBL gets some licks in on Hornswoggle. Spot of the match. Finley goes for a suicide dive, and JBL nails him with a trash can lid.
Also, Fit Finley is an old-ass man.
Yeah, Finley's definitely in his 50s at this point, and he's rocking it.
He does a picture-perfect suicide dive, like 10 feet out of the ring.
Fit Finley is such a stud. Like, I wish WWE would do a documentary on him, because he had one of the most interesting careers of anybody in wrestling history.
He's maybe the most legendary performer in the history of European wrestling. And, like, that doesn't mean something to everyone, but to the people it means something to.
Europe's a big-ass place.
And, like, he owned it.
Yeah.
Like, he would literally just tour all of
15
Europe.
15 years, 20 years.
He was the heel god. And, like, half the time he was just, like, riding around in caravans from town to town.
Yeah. JBL sets up for the clothesline from hell. Finley throws a trash can in his face, hits the Celtic cross. He slams JBL through a table in the corner. JBL recovers. He hits the clothesline from hell and gets the pin. That's a pretty feel-bad ending here, but they've got some pretty serious plans for JBL, as he's going to get to feud with Cena and then Punk for the World Heavyweight title later in the summer.
And it makes sense when you know that they're phasing Finley out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Now, it's understandable that JBL goes over here.
It's just stunning that instead of Ken Kennedy being made this megastar, this all ends with heel JBL beating Finley. That's the match we get out of all this.
And then we go backstage to Kim Kardashian interviewing Ken Kennedy, who says he's going to win Money in the Bank again this year. How is this all they did with Kim Kardashian here?
She was not the megastar yet that she would become.
Before Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
I think it's just started. Like, you can tell because her, like, hair is completely different and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like,
this is before it's a phenomenon. Like, here it's still more like, oh yeah, wasn't her dad one of OJ's lawyers?
Well, mostly this is post-sex tape Kim Kardashian.
Oh,
so it's
that
like,
too.
oh, here's the most famous porn star in the country, Kim Kardashian.
This is one of those things that, like, if they'd gotten her 5 years later, like, the coup that would have been.
Yes. Oh, God, yes. And she does, like, I always judge celebrities on these shows on a sliding scale of how hard they try, right? Because that's all that really matters, is whether you come in good faith and do your best. She does her best. She tries here. That's all I can ask for.
Next up, we've got the Money in the Bank ladder match. Participants, Carlito, CM Punk, Chris Jericho, John Morrison, Ken Kennedy, MVP, and Shelton Benjamin. Jeff Hardy was the 8th participant announced for the match, but he was pulled after he failed a drug test a few weeks before the show. He was the Intercontinental Champion at the time, so he dropped the title to Jericho on Raw.
Oh, Jeff.
It's what holds, I mean, that is just what holds Jeff back. Like, that lingers with them, and, like, that's why Jeff only holds the world title for a couple weeks at a time, even though he's their most over babyface after this.
There's a moment in January of this year where, like, Jeff is legitimately so hot he could have main evented this WrestleMania.
Yeah, when he does the Swanton Bomb off the Titantron on Orton before the Rumble.
And that's like the hottest Raw segment we had seen in years.
That was crazy.
It literally felt like he had grown up into a main eventer in that moment.
Yeah. And threw it all away.
Yep.
John Morrison out first. WrestleMania debut for him, period, actually, because I don't think he never made it on the main show as Johnny Nitro, which is kind of surprising.
Now, hold on, because his WrestleMania debut was just randomly being in Bischoff's office that one time in the horrible jacket.
He is one half of the WWE champions with The Miz, who he beat to win a spot in this match. He's really come on as a character. Since getting John Morrison as a character and getting paired with The Miz, he's really come on as a character.
It's so interesting, too, because that character seemed like something that was going to be so hard for him. When
he first came out with that, it was like, what the fuck is this?
Like, really, John Morrison as a wrestling character? Is that really what we're doing? But he gets the chance to like grow it so much on the dirt sheet with like no pressure on him.
And yeah, now all these years later, they're back.
And he's come so far as a personality now.
I'm a huge fan of him. Like
huge.
I think I like him more than just about anybody else. I feel like he should have been a mega star in wrestling. And the reason he didn't is a weird one that I think we'll get into another time.
Another one of Vince's weird hang-ups.
Carlito is out second. He had a feud with Triple H back in the fall, but he's pretty much fallen back into the mid-card now, from which he will never escape.
Yeah, if John Morrison didn't become the star he should have for outside reasons, we've established that Carlito didn't become one for inside reasons.
Shelton Benjamin out third. He's now the gold standard in an attempt to give him some personality, so he wears gold trunks and has bleached his hair blonde like Cisco.
If you need all of your personality to be something you wear on the outside, brother, you don't got personality.
Punk out next. He won the ECW title from Morrison in the fall after chasing it for months, and lost it to Chavo Guerrero in January after Edge interfered, and what I'd say was the moment that truly buried ECW.
I agree. This Punk looks so greasy and bad.
Yeah, long-haired Punk was not the right look.
Punk obviously has such an ingrown fan base, is so good at promos. But I want to say right here now, it's not that big a surprise that they didn't go further with him before this, because he's still having trouble getting this wrestling style to work, because he's trying to incorporate all this MMA shit that Heyman made him do. And like his style is a mess. Like his matches are all over the place. And this long hair shit really isn't working. He's not going to settle on what works for him for like another 2 years.
Yeah. Kennedy out next. We've gone over the many travails of the previous year for him. He's still kind of over, but like he's missed his moment at this point.
Oh yeah, big time.
MVP out next. He has been the United States champion for almost a year since he won the title from Chris Benoit Judgment Day. He's been in a long feud with Matt Hardy. They were feuding, and they did all these fun segments like who can do better at like shooting baskets, like who can throw a football further. And then they became friends and won the tag titles. And then Matt got hurt, and MVP turned on him and took him out, and we haven't seen Matt since.
Which is important to know for this match. We'll get to it later.
Yeah, I love that feud.
Yes. Like, that is one of like your favorite feuds that you bring up all the time.
MVP got to box Evander Holyfield on an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event.
MVP is the person I associate most with the United States title. Like, he's the only person who...
I think he held it like 3 straight WrestleManias here.
Yeah, he's like the only person who I associate with that title. Like, he just...
Yeah.
He's the only guy who ever did anything with it.
Chris Jericho out last to a big pop. Returned to WWE after a 2-year absence in November and immediately challenged Randy Orton for the WWE title. JBL interfered in his match against Orton and cost him the title. He beat JBL, and now he's the reigning Intercontinental Champion. He gets a nice pop here, but his return has not really panned out the way you were thinking it was going to.
I don't know what show we're going to cover the return of Chris Jericho on. This isn't the right one. I don't want to deviate on it right now. But it is one of the biggest missed opportunities of this era, and that's saying a lot. There were a lot of missed opportunities during this era, but they blow it so hard, so fast.
It felt like all the pieces were ready for him to be a star. Like, he's in great shape. He's got his hair cut. He's changed his gear up. He's got a cooler new entrance. He's got his finisher right. He's finally got the code breaker. Feels perfect, and it flops so badly he ends up having to turn heel, but that ends up being the best run of his career.
Yes. Miraculous, like we've always said about Jericho, when things are going wrong, he finds a way to make them right.
Yeah, he just weaseled his way into the Batista-Shawn Michaels feud and made it about himself.
That's the amazing thing, is Batista just wins and washes his hands of it, and then it goes on for 6 more months without him.
Yeah, for no particular reason, we're now in this Shawn Jericho feud, and it ends up being one of the best of all time.
Because Batista won. He's whatever.
I did my job, kicked his ass.
Yep.
First big move here is an insane one from Morrison as he grabs a ladder, goes to the top rope, and does a moonsault down to the floor with it.
That really sets the tone for this match.
That is nuts.
This is the Money in the Bank that went too far for me.
Oh my god.
I'm just going to say this right now. There's a lot of genuinely dangerous shit that they do. And I don't just mean the spots. I feel like whoever helped plan this out did not think ahead enough to how dangerous it was. I feel like this could have gone really bad.
Kennedy's on top of the ladder. Morrison rides a ladder to the middle of the ring to cut him off. Then Shelton, Morrison, and Kennedy do a Tower of Doom spot off the ladder. Shelton gets pushed off the ladder, walks on the top rope, and then tries to springboard onto the ladder, but the ladder just crumples under his weight.
Here's what I want to talk about. That was very nearly the coolest spot we'd ever seen. He just he doesn't wait for the ladder to stabilize before he puts his weight on it, so it crumples under him. The ladder shatters into pieces. There's literally a jutting piece of metal sticking straight up.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of the ring. They wrestled for 5 more fucking minutes with that thing sticking straight up, and the entire time all I could do was stare at it. Because anybody could have gone through that thing and died. How could you, as a ref, not see oh, hey.
Somebody please get that thing out of there.
They do a spot on that ladder next to this jutting bit.
Yeah, where Kennedy does the rolling Samoan drop.
The one where he can't see and can't fully control where he's going.
Okay. And then Shelton takes an insane bump where he climbs the ladder, gets pushed off it, does a somersault through the air, and crashes through one of those ladders that's propped between the railing and the ring apron like a table. This is nuts.
Shelton Benjamin's very athletic, but if he doesn't get the right push off of this, he could have gone through this thing head first.
Yep.
Again, these are very impressive spots, but there's a difference between... Okay, the biggest, best ladder match spot I've ever seen is the spear from Edge to Jeff Hardy in TLC 2, okay?
That's a great one.
But it's relatively safe. It's a flat back bump. Jeff goes limp. Edge guides him down. It's relatively safe but incredibly impressive. These spots are ridiculously dangerous.
Jericho gets Morrison in the walls of Jericho on the ladder. That's, I think, the only other time I've seen. He may have done it to Michaels too, but that's a repeat of the spot he did to Benoit in their ladder match. I love that.
And Morrison almost doesn't catch his foot, and so Jericho kind of slides down the ladder. So he's upside down, holding onto Morrison's feet,
and really cranking that thing on him.
Yeah.
Punk and Carlito both springboard onto ladders to fight with Jericho and Kennedy. Jericho is the last man standing, but Carlito cuts him off and hits a back cracker off the ladder.
That was cool.
MVP climbs. It looks like he's going to win. Matt Hardy makes his return from injury and cuts him off. Hits the twist of fate off the ladder. Welcome back, Matt.
What a gigantic pop he got when he hopped the guardrail.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny because Matt Hardy is one of those people who fans have such an incredible fondness for that whenever he got put in a spot like this, they just lose their shit.
I don't know how to explain this, but two ladders get wedged together and Morrison is able to climb one of them. Like, it's not spread, like, it's not open, but it's
they put one of the ladders
on the
fully through one of the rungs. And so when you stand on it, the other ladder goes straight up into the air. And so it's a closed ladder, but Morrison climbs it. And, like, that was very cool. And then when they push him off, I've never seen anyone crotch themselves on the rope from that high up before. His poor fucking testicles. There's no way you can prevent your testicles from getting annihilated doing that.
No. Yeah, I am always fond of these spots where they build structures with the ladder. I just find that to be the coolest thing.
I can just imagine them like wandering around a Home Depot trying to think of different ways to construct.
Ways we can put that. I would love to see footage of them messing around in the ring before this, like trying to like build the towers and stuff.
What if we made a fort?
Punk and Jericho, first Kennedy is alone at the top of the ladder. Punk cuts him off. He turns around and Jericho hits a code breaker with the ladder. Punk and Jericho fight on top of the ladder. Punk trips Jericho. Jericho's leg gets caught and he's hanging upside down. Punk is all alone. He retrieves the briefcase and wins. Crowd goes wild. I don't think anybody had picked Punk to win this thing.
I mean, Punk didn't even seem like he had any momentum coming into this show. Every single other wrestler in this seemed like a much more viable candidate to win.
I had assumed Jeff was going to win before he got suspended. And then when he got suspended, I think I was thinking of Jericho just because he was the biggest star in the match. And yeah, I think this happened. I'm thinking of Punk.
I think this happened multiple times for Punk.
The next year he won again. And again, nobody was picking him.
I think it was just because multiple times what happened was somebody got busted for drugs. Vince looked up and down the card and said, that guy's not on drugs.
He doesn't use drugs. Look at him. Look at those skinny legs. They're disgusting.
He's just like, fuck it, let's put the world title on that guy. So at least we can tell USA Today that our world champion's not on drugs.
Yeah. I mean, that was a good match, but man, a lot of those spots were too much.
Like, after the first 5 minutes, it was okay. But, like, this could have very easily been one of the most tragic moments in wrestling history.
Yeah, somebody getting impaled by a ladder in the middle of the ring, that would have been really bad.
That would have been the end of ladder matches forever. And like I've never had my skin crawl like I did watching that. Like even now watching it, it's too much.
We get shots of Cena, Orton, and Triple H preparing for their match. Then they do a recap of the Hall of Fame ceremony, which included Jack and Jerry Briscoe being inducted by JBL, Eddie Graham being inducted by Dusty Rhodes, Gordon Soley being inducted by Jim Ross, Mae Young being inducted by Pat Patterson, Rocky Johnson and High Chief Peter Maivia being inducted by The Rock, and Ric Flair being inducted by Triple H. That's a solid class. Flair going in obviously is a big one. Getting Rock to come do his dad and his grandpa was a big deal. And then always like when they throw in like the local color of Eddie Graham and Gordon Soley being Florida legends.
It's funny to me because we mentioned before it ended badly between WWE and The Rock. Like when he left, like The Rock's feelings were hurt because they didn't try to keep him at all. And so like this almost feels like High Chief Peter Maivia and Rocky Johnson belong in the Hall of Fame. Don't get me wrong. High Chief more than Rocky Johnson, but still. But this really felt like hey Rock, what if we honored your dad and granddad? Would that help, thaw things a little bit here?
Definitely.
Because 2 years later, he's back. He's back in the ring.
The Hall of Famers come out on the stage. Eddie Graham is represented by his son Mike, as he had passed away. Gordon Soley, who had also passed by his 5 children. Chief Maivia by his daughter, by his wife Leah, and his daughter Ata, who was Rock's mom. May teases trying to take her clothes off, and Graham stops her. That was a funny moment.
That was pretty funny, yeah.
Flair doesn't come out on stage here, but his kids, Ashley, aka Charlotte, Megan, David, and Reed are all there. Reed, of course, has unfortunately passed away.
Yeah, that's the deeply weird thing, is that this is like a teenager Charlotte.
Baby Charlotte. Yeah, she's like in high school here, I think. Maybe college by now.
And there's probably another podcast where we'll have time to talk about Charlotte and how basically she gets into wrestling because of Reed's death.
Yeah.
And how Reed was Ric's hope for his legacy in wrestling was to come through Reed, and that's a whole bag of worms.
David had tried it and it didn't work out.
And then Reed gets into drugs, and he goes to Japan, and no one's there to help him, so he overdoses. It's a whole messy fucking... It makes Ric Flair a better father, but it's his biggest regret. It's a whole thing.
And then Todd Grisham interviews Snoop Dogg backstage. He says he's become friends with Festus. Santino interrupts and talks some trash. So Snoop pulls out a bell and rings it, which, if you'll remember, turns Festus into a monster. He was, basically catatonic until the bell would ring, and then he would, rev up and become a monster. Festus, weird gimmick, but, hell of a character.
There are some characters in wrestling history that I just genuinely can't get my brain to the point where you would create them.
Yeah.
You come up with a character that is mentally disabled until the bell rings, at which point he becomes like Andre the Giant.
Yeah. Festus had a great match with The Undertaker a few weeks after this.
That's true. Fun thing about Festus, still on the roster today. Very different gimmick.
Indeed.
What was their theme song? Because he had...
He was Tim and Jesse? I don't remember.
Yeah. That was Terry Gordy's kid.
Yeah.
And it was biscuits and gravy.
Yes, that's right. Just 2 good old Southern boys.
Oh, boy. Yes, they were.
So Festus chases Santino off. Snoop says he got the bell from Mick Foley, who shows up and has a sock with bling on it.
And this is one of these roll your eyes dad joke moments. But at least Ron Simmons doesn't come out and say damn.
Yeah. Then we get Batista versus Umaga, which is a match without much build. They just announced they were going to do a SmackDown versus Raw match, and Batista and Umaga were picked as the representatives of their shows. Kind of tough break that Batista gets thrown into this match, but there just wasn't really a spot for him on this show.
I mean, he still gets a highlight match to some extent. He gets to beat. This is a pretty good match for Batista. So, I mean, at least it's something.
Yeah. Regal and Teddy Long do the introductions for their respective guys. So Regal gets to call Umaga Umanga, as he always would. Regal tweeted about it. Somebody asked him why he called him that, and his response was actually very sweet and endearing. He said I called him that so that people would remember him. He was a great man.
And fuck, it worked.
Yeah. We're still talking about it 10 years later.
I think we've covered on this show before my very conflicting feelings on Umaga. And just the idea of having a savage character in the thousands, much less ever at all. This probably is...
no shade on the worker himself, who...
Yes.
Yeah, guy was a star.
It's not his fault that this is the gimmick they made him do. The fact that he made it work as well. The fact that we don't remember this as a gigantic wrestle crap abomination is a testament to him.
How good he was.
Yeah.
Umaga lands a big kick that sends Batista to the floor. There's actually a split in the crowd, and some fans are cheering Umaga, which I thought was interesting. I love their "ooh ooh Umaga" chant.
That was like one. That was one of the first like crowd like unique chants that I ever remember hearing.
Those
Now
Europeans in the crowd.
Yeah, now it's become like such a thing. But yeah, where like the British crowd start doing like soccer chants at the wrestling matches.
Love that. Umaga works on a nerve hold. He later goes for the Samoan spike. Batista blocks it. Batista hits a Batista bomb where he falls down, which was a really cool touch. I don't know if he actually slipped or like it was just portraying it as Umaga's so heavy he couldn't keep him up, but he falls down on the power bomb and gets the pin.
I think he really did slip because it seems awfully bold of Batista to try to get big ass Umaga all the way up on his shoulders and then bring him back down. Like, Umaga's got a lot of lower body weight.
Yeah.
He seems like a really weirdly bulky dude to try to pick up.
We see Mayweather hanging out with the money team backstage, and then they do the tail of the tape for the fight against Big Show. Quick recap of Kane winning the Battle Royal on the pre-show. Then we've got our ECW title match as Chavo Guerrero defends against Kane. Chavo enters first, and then Kane sneaks in behind him, hits a choke slam right after the bell for the pin, and wins in 9 seconds.
Can we pour one out real quick for Joey Styles and Taz? Or Joey Styles, is it Taz here?
It's Joey and Taz. Yeah, they haven't done it, switched to Adam Lee yet.
Joey Styles is only on commentary for 5 minutes on this whole show, and he sounds so fucking checked out and bitter.
Yeah. Well, he's about to move over to the website, which he ended up doing for a really long time. But yeah, I think he clearly was just no longer interested in doing ECW commentary, and I can't blame him.
Like, to have to sit here for 3.5 hours to call an 11-second match is just so painful.
It's pretty bad. It's real bad.
Chavo Guerrero is your fucking champion. It's just like, that's where we are.
They do the video package for Michaels versus Flair. Then they get a quick interview with Flair. He just woos when he's asked about his game plan. He's just going to nage him.
He's just going to go for it.
All right. It's time for Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair. If Ric Flair loses by any means, he has to retire. Would it have been too much if Evil Vince had made this like a dual retirement match, and if Shawn lost, he had to retire?
I was going to bring that up because I understand that Shawn wanting to give Rick one last match is his motivation here, but I feel like at the back of my mind, it's difficult not to say, like, hey, Shawn, why don't you just lay down for Flair? you know? So, like, I wish they had done something like that so that Shawn has no choice.
Yeah. I think I feel like there's a way to get there. Like, Regal the evil heel GM. Like, you can make it work.
Right. I don't hate what they did. It's just, yeah, that seems like a better fit for me.
Flair immediately gets in Shawn's face, yelling about Old Yeller, and Shawn slaps the shit out of him. Busts Flair's lip open.
Damn.
Shawn goes up to the top. Flair throws him off. Flair goes to the top and actually hits a crossbody.
He hits the fucking crossbody. That's how you know he's retiring.
I gotta say, Lawler kind of crushed it on commentary in this match.
Lawler would very occasionally come up big, and it would usually be in these kind of Legends matches because you could see that it reflected something for himself.
Yeah.
So, like, he made, like, such a big deal about the fact that Flair's going to go down fighting. He's not going to stop.
Yeah, I love the way he celebrated Flair hitting the crossbody.
Like, he did it!
Yeah, it's the first time he's ever hit a top rope. Of course it's not, but we'll pretend like it was.
Yep.
Flair hits the knee breaker. He goes for the figure 4, but Shawn blocks it. He knocks Flair out to the floor, hits him with a baseball slide. He goes for an Asai moonsault and hits his ribs on the metal frame of the announce table and has to break his ribs. Like, just has to. This was brutal.
There's this uncomfortable moment where he hits and he immediately starts to, like, try to shove himself off because he probably thought the table was going to break, but it doesn't.
Oh, just horrible.
And here's the thing. he had to have known that that's what was going to happen when he did this. That's the story of the match. Without this, Flair never has a way to get back into the match.
Yeah. That's how Flair has a chance here is Shawn fucks up his ribs on the table here. That
So
makes you
literally,
believe he could beat him.
so Shawn had to have been back in the back, like designing his own death.
Yeah, I mean, he can just miss and go through the problem is like he's gonna hit the frame of the table and like maybe it's not metal, but it's either wood or metal or plastic, and all of those are gonna hit to hurt are gonna hurt if you hit them like that.
Oh yeah.
Flair hits a nice vertical suplex back in the ring. Lawler mentions that he watched Old Yeller last night after the Hall of Fame, and he points out they didn't put Old Yeller down because he got old. They put him down because he got rabies, and Flair is fighting tonight like a rabid dog.
That is maybe the most relevant and wonderful observation that Jerry Lawler's ever made in his 30-year commentary career.
It's fucking true. I guarantee you he actually did watch Old Yeller.
He probably did.
Flair telegraphs a backdrop and Shawn catches him with a swinging neck breaker. Flair charges, Shawn backdrops him over the top to the floor. Shawn goes up to the top rope, goes for a moonsault, but like misses it, and Flair doesn't catch him, and Shawn just splats on the floor.
Shawn Michaels is literally killing himself to make this match work.
Yeah. And again, like, this is when you start to buy, like, oh, Flair could beat him because Shawn is dead.
And it's that classic Shawn booking. Like, at every WrestleMania, Shawn tries too much. Because it's WrestleMania, baby, and he's got to steal the show.
Back in the ring, Shawn hits a forearm and then kips up. He does 2 inverted atomic drops, a scoop slam, the flying elbow. He tunes up the band, but he hesitates on Sweet Chin Music, and Flair takes advantage to lock him in the figure 4. Great spot.
Great spot. Like, he's still in the mindset that he can get away with not really hurting Flair to end this. And, like, eventually Flair's going to force his hand, and that's the brilliance of this match.
Shawn manages to turn the figure 4 over to get out. They do some mat wrestling. Shawn tries to bridge out of a pin, but he can't do it because of his ribs. No idea if that's real or not.
I mean,
Probably
I think
real.
This is also probably hard for both of them to do. I mean, it's not like Flair has the abdominal power that he used to have.
Yeah. Flair cuts Shawn's knee out from under him. Shawn tries for an enziguri, but Flair ducks it, and he once again gets him in the figure 4. Michaels turns it over, but Flair rolls it back over. Shawn manages to get to the ropes. They both slowly get to their feet. Shawn pops up and hits a massive Sweet Chin Music.
Just like, I've never seen him do it that way before. It was very cool.
Yeah, this is like he popped up off the mat in one motion and hit it.
God damn.
He manages to drape an arm on Flair. Flair kicks out at 2. Shawn tunes up the band again, but Flair catches him with a low blow. Like, now Shawn is clearly going all out to win this thing.
Yes. And, like, Flair, and that's even better, because now that Shawn's still going all out, and he still can't get Flair. Flair, the wily motherfucker.
Michaels gets Flair in the figure 4. Flair rakes Shawn's eyes to escape, but he can barely stand. They exchange chops. Shawn hits a Sweet Chin Music out of nowhere and levels Flair.
If I said that I've never seen another Sweet Chin Music like that, he does this one in the middle of, like, a punch exchange. I've never seen anyone do this.
Yeah, like, blocks the punch, throws it back, and boom, foot to the face.
Like, I honestly think Sweet Chin Music would have been even better if he had used it like this more. Like, he can just pop this shit out of anywhere at any time.
Shawn tunes up the band. He hesitates. This is one of my favorite finishes to a match of all time. Flair, like, is just in agony, can barely stand, but he kind of squares up and is like, come on, like, let's do it. Flair tells...
He'd never stop until someone forced him to.
Yeah. Flair tells Shawn come on, do it. I'm ready. Shawn says, I'm sorry, I love you, and knocks him out with sweet chin music. Covers him, gets the 1, 2, 3. The legendary career of Ric Flair is over.
I'm sorry, I love you.
Boom. Black.
This is also one of those few times where a lot of wrestlers forget that the camera is there and that can be part of the match. Because obviously no one in the live crowd saw him say that.
No.
But
well, maybe if the camera if the screen was showing what the TV was, then they could see it on the screen.
But just to be smart enough to make that part of the match and be like, for everybody at home and for anybody watching on the Titantron, you could read his lips perfectly. And it's just, I have seen this show upwards of 20 times. I watched it yesterday and started to tear up in that moment. And Ric Flair doesn't mean as much to me as he does to a lot of people. I was not an NWA guy. I was not a WCW guy. You are the WCW guy.
Yeah, but I mean, for me, by the time I got into it, like, Flair was not really that big of a star anymore.
But like,
it's kind of like, who's the weird old guy?
But you can't not feel this.
No, just the pride of Ric Flair, that he just will not lay down. Like, he will go out like a man.
And there's one thing that we kind of didn't mention, and that's like the video that they show of Ric Flair, like of his whole career before this, which became like Smark shorthand. Because like they set it to this song called Leave the Memories Alone.
Leave the memories alone.
And to this day, if you want to talk to a Smark about something that was too emotional, you'll just be like, insert Leave the Memories Alone.
Yeah, just an amazing video package that showed his whole career. Yeah. Yeah. And Ric Flair, this stands out to me as a motif that we've had throughout these WrestleManias. WWE reconnecting with the past.
Yes.
It was Ric Flair who started it with that video package, the Kid Rock video package, with the history of WWE back in 2002.
You're right.
And it brings us to an end here. The end of the most legendary career in wrestling history.
And it's just so fascinating that the face of the NWA, the face of WCW, the face of Vince McMahon's most stringent and desperate competition of his career is this man. And even Vince respects him enough to give him
Vince had a lot of respect for Flair. Like, I mean, the fact that that they had an agreement in the early 90s that, like, if Vince moved him out of the main event, he'd let him go, and Vince honored it, like, I think says a lot about the way he felt about Flair.
Absolutely. Vince is a wrestling history nerd. He doesn't want you to know that. Like, I don't think that he's ever been proud to associate himself with wrestling, but you can see that here. Like, especially as he gets older, like, it matters to him, this stuff. And it's very cool.
Fantastic match. I think this was unquestionably the best match of Flair's kind of late run.
It's one of those matches, too, where, like, the actual in-ring stuff, it's good. It's very much that old argument of, like, how good of a match can you have with a broomstick? Because Flair didn't have a lot to give here.
Pretty close to a broomstick at this point. Yeah.
He gave everything he had, but mostly it's just Shawn Michaels taking huge bumps by himself.
Yeah, I mean, Shawn was the fucking man. Like, he just was. I mean, late career, second run Shawn Michaels obviously wasn't the athlete that first run Shawn Michaels was, but he had learned so much about wrestling psychology and had such a better, more sympathetic character that I've always enjoyed his second run more.
I don't know that Shawn Michaels is the WWE main event style. He's who everyone else has been chasing ever since and will be chasing forever. No one else could this consistently put on matches of this quality in this way. Like, when you talk about how when the WWE style is right, it's full of drama and perfect and it's beautiful. That's Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania. Like, that's what it is. That's the best that it gets.
And we're only getting started because next year he's setting his sights on the streak.
Setting his sights on the best match in the history of professional wrestling, according to some.
Yeah. Ooh. Next up, Todd Grisham interviews Edge about the main event against The Undertaker. And then we get a filler match, the Playboy Bunny Mania Lumberjack match, as Maria and Ashley take on Beth Phoenix and Melina. Why is this happening?
Guys, I want you to put yourself in these poor girls' shoes for a second, okay? Doesn't matter which one. Ashley and Maria are not wrestlers, but they're here to do their best. This is Maria's moment. She's just appeared in Playboy. Maria here has clearly come in, like, done some training and is really trying, because Maria's actually not bad in this match at all. But just put yourself in the shoes of, like, Beth Phoenix. You are now the leader of this division. It all revolves around you. You're really the only particularly good person in it. And you've just got to carry this shit pile. And then the lights go out in the middle of your match.
Yeah, I had completely forgotten this happened, but yes, the lights go out in the middle of the match.
And guys, and they have to wrestle in the dark.
Yeah, like it's a literal dark match. They shine some spotlights on the ring so we can see what's happening.
It's just so embarrassing. And, like, that's what it was to be the top star in the women's division for so long. Like, thank God that Beth and Trish had, like, the gumption to stick with it and, like, carry this division until it could finally get somewhere good. Because, my God, how grim is this?
It's very bad. Beth hits Maria with a fisherman's brainbuster for the win. Yeah, just total filler match. It's not a good time for the women's. Forgot to mention Snoop Dogg was involved here. He was the master of ceremonies for the match. The storyline was Santino was jealous that Maria wanted to pose for Playboy. If anybody cares.
And because this is during the period where Santino Marella was just banging all the hottest women on the roster on kayfabe, which yes. I don't know, like, who he slipped a 20 to make that his character.
Yeah. Next up, triple threat match for the WWE title as Randy Orton defends against John Cena and Triple H. Orton was scheduled to face Cena for the title at No Mercy. Cena got hurt right before the match and was unable to wrestle because he tore his pec. Orton was awarded the title as a result. Cena was expected to miss WrestleMania and not return until later in the spring. Triple H came out at No Mercy and challenged Orton to defend the title against him right then and there, caught him with a roll-up, and beat him for the title. That was the opening match of the pay-per-view. Triple H was scheduled to face Umaga in a street fight, so that was changed to be for the title. Triple H beat Umaga to retain the title, and then Orton announced he was cashing in his rematch clause for that night and faced Triple H in a last man standing match in the main event and beat him to win back the title. That was a great one night story.
That's one of my favorite one-off pay-per-views too. It's just I love to have a theme across the course of an entire night, and all three of those matches are awesome.
Yeah, Cena made a shocking return at the Royal Rumble, which we've covered in our Royal Rumble 2008 episode. He entered number 30. He won the match. Last eliminated Triple H. It was an all-time stunner. Nobody thought Cena was going to be back that soon.
And it's one of those moments. There are little moments along the way that kind of turn John Cena from every smart's least favorite wrestler into today Cena, who is the most respected wrestler in the history of WWE or something like that. We all love him.
This was a big one because he got such a pop when he came out.
Just that joyful shock of how are you doing this?
Yeah, Superman. Cena then announced he didn't want to wait until WrestleMania to face Orton. He wanted his title shot that night on Raw. He instead got it at No Way Out, where Orton got himself disqualified by attacking the referee to retain the title. This is the most dickish thing ever, where I think he just literally slaps the referee to get disqualified.
Genius. What a fucking genius. We should probably mention also that this is during the age of Orton, where he gets where they kind of make Orton the top heel star, and kind of the same way that Triple H was in 2002. Yeah. Where the whole shows kind of revolve around him, and he's got these long promo segments on every show, and he's in one-off feuds with Jericho and Jeff Hardy and all these people along the way. And it's working a little, but not really. This just isn't the right Orton yet.
The big highlight of this run, do you remember the match he had against Shawn at Survivor Series?
Killer match.
Yeah, so the storyline is Shawn isn't allowed to use Sweet Chin music, so instead Shawn is breaking out like he does the sharpshooter, he does the crippler crossface, he does the ankle lock. Like he's just trying to figure out what he can do to beat Orton. And Orton beats him because Shawn like instinctively goes for Sweet Chin music and then has to stop himself, and Orton catches him with the RKO.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is a great match. And like Michaels would use all those submissions from then on. Like that just became part of his deal.
So then Triple H won an Elimination Chamber match that night to earn a shot at Orton at WrestleMania. The next night on Raw, Cena was given one more chance to get into the title match. He had to beat Orton to do it, and he succeeded. I think Triple H was the referee in that match.
Yes, he was. And then he pedigrees them both afterwards.
Yeah. Then they did a thing where, like, each week, one guy was allowed to pick the other two guys' opponents. And Triple H did a thing where he made Cena and Orton wrestle the entire Raw roster.
Okay. Can we talk about how awesome that segment was, though?
Yes.
Because, like, in that moment, they realized something that they never capitalize on, and that's that maybe Cena and Orton are, like, one of the greatest tag teams we never got to see.
Yeah. When they do the combo FU RKO.
That was, like, one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life.
Cena gets the guy up on his shoulders, and he just, like, pitches him off to Orton, who RKOs them out of the air.
And, like, just, like, the give and take that they have as tag team partners is, like, stunning. Like, chemistry.
I remember having this idea that they could be the new Mega Powers. And, like, they'd team up for a while, and then Orton would turn on him and just, like, reveal that, like, it was all a plot. I learned all your secrets. I learned all your weaknesses. Now I know everything about you, and I can destroy you.
I always thought there was a really genuinely amazing Orton Cena storyline that they never got to.
Because aren't they like each other, like the flip sides of the coin?
Yeah.
Like Randy Orton is an evil version of John Cena.
Orton didn't have to work for shit. He was handed everything Cena had to work for, but Cena surpassed him, and Orton's been bitter ever since. Yes, they're the same guy.
But the crowd loves Orton and hates Cena.
Yes.
And that should make Cena crazy.
The company has at every opportunity tried to put Orton above Cena.
Yeah. Like, there is a lot there. And, like, their feuds, when they actually happened, were super boring and terrible.
Yeah. Because they were never for any reason. It was always just like, well, I guess it's time to put these two together.
Yeah, that's the issue with WWE booking for the most part in this era, is just really lazy. It's just like, we're going to have these guys wrestle at the next 4 pay-per-views just to do it.
Gross.
Cena's out first. He has an entrance where he's got a high school marching band playing his song. Doesn't really work because he just like you can't hear the band. Like you can't hear what they're playing.
I don't know. I kind of love this. This is, even though this isn't amazing, this is still probably like the second best Cena entrance of all time, because Cena did not have a lot of cool entrances.
No, that really the only good one is all the Cena clones the year after this.
And even that's like,
that was cool. That was great. And then Triple H and Orton don't get special entrances.
I think this is the last time Triple H doesn't get a special entrance.
Yeah, actually, off the top of my head, he pretty much has something every year after this.
Like, he's the one who really figured that out, that was the most important thing.
What's the best Triple H WrestleMania entrance? The only one I feel like I really liked was the Metallica one.
Yes,
against
where
Taker.
like all the dudes with shields are there, and then they shine all the spotlights on him. Yeah, that's awesome.
The one. It's such a shame that they have to edit out For Whom the Bell Tolls on the network.
Because that was... Because I also never thought that I'd hear like Metallica on WWE.
Oh, Metallica's impossible to get the rights to. Like, that's super expensive.
But they got them for one night.
So Orton pretty much kicks the shit out of both guys throughout this match. They really put him over.
Which is good, because they know...
he needs it.
And they're taking the belt off of him next month. So, I mean, they got to give him something.
Orton hits a double draping DDT off the ring ropes. Cena hits the throwback. and then his diving leg drop bulldog thingy. Orton slips out of the ring and rams Cena's head into the ring post. Cena comes back into the ring. He gets Orton in the STFU. Triple H breaks it up, slams Cena into the steps. He busts out the Indian Deathlock on Orton. Cena breaks that up. He once again gets the STFU. Triple H jumps in and puts Cena in the crippler crossface while he's got that hold on, and Cena gets to the ropes. They did a good job coming up with some creative, like, three-man spots here.
It's funny because this is going to be any triple threat you do at WrestleMania has got to compete with the WrestleMania 21 Forever.
Yeah.
And they're all going to pale by comparison because that's something special. But also, this has to compete with so much on this same show. Most years, this would have been a perfectly fine main event. It's just, this match is completely forgotten about here because it's they come up with inventive stuff.
It's
just
such
not
an afterthought,
special.
though. Yeah, I mean, it's a triple threat, and even though there's kind of issues between all three of these guys, it just doesn't kind of click into place as a storyline.
It feels like there's two singles matches going on at the same time here. Like, either one of those singles matches would have been great for this show, but throwing both of them in just doesn't feel right.
It's just one of those things where it's like, how else would you make the pieces fit together here? Like, if Triple H wrestled Flair instead, like, what was Shawn gonna do?
I guess he could have fought Batista or something. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And they put together this card not expecting Cena to show up at the Royal Rumble. Like, nobody was expecting that. They didn't know what was going to happen till like the week of.
Cena recovers. He hits the Blue Thunder Bomb and the five-knuckle shuffle. Sets up for the FU. Triple H slips out. Sets up for the pedigree. Cena double legs him. Triple H hits his knee face buster, then a spine buster. Triple H hits the pedigree. He covers, but Orton comes in, nails him in the head with the punt, and pins Cena to get the pin. I did like the finish there.
The punt.
The punt. WrestleMania debut for the punt.
And, like, this is where Orton's starting to put the pieces together.
Yeah.
Like, his character's still super clunky and not quite there, but he's got the punt, he's got the draping DDT, he's got all the elements are starting to get there. By this point next year, he'll be there.
Oh, yeah. When he gets, for me, it's not because of this, but when he gets the sleeve tattoos,
yes.
Like that's when he puts it together. Is that time when he gets legacy and that whole thing is when he kind of gets it all as a character and becomes this like psycho killing machine.
Oh my God, I can't wait till we get to talk about legacy Orton because that could have been so much more than it was.
They had it, and they screw it up.
Yep.
But that's next year. Video package for Mayweather versus Big Show. And then I did like this because I liked the way it showed like both of them training, like Big Show watching tape on Mayweather and like figuring out how he could beat him.
Yeah, they could have played this for like Big Show's just a big dumb giant who doesn't take him seriously because he's so much bigger, but they don't do that at all. Big Show trains for this fight like he's training for a boxing match with Floyd Mayweather.
Because he learned how to box. I think he had done hadn't he done a boxing match or two?
I think like amateur stuff.
While he was away? Yeah, I mean, not serious, but yeah, he had learned how to box and I think done a little bit of boxing.
Like, and he attributed that to like all of this weight loss and stuff. And I guess that's the other reason why he was the natural choice for this. I don't know if he knew that he was facing Mayweather when he came back, but that's just how he chose to lose weight.
He's dropped so much weight.
And so, like, the good thing about that, too, is that he knows how to spar now, so he knows how to, like, feed in for Mayweather and stuff, too. That becomes a big part of this.
Big Show out first, then Mayweather makes his entrance. Money rains down from the sky as Mayweather's coming to the ring. He's got on a fur coat and, like, long shorts that go all the way down to his calves.
Let me say this. We've talked about a lot of reprehensible human beings on this podcast. In fact, just last week, we talked about a pretty reprehensible human being. Floyd Mayweather is one of the biggest scumbags ever to walk the face of the earth.
Very bad person.
So I say that so that I can say this. But here he looked so fucking cool.
Yeah, he does.
He's so fucking cool.
Yeah, his sunglasses, his gold chain, his posse all around him. Pretty cool, like, original entrance music.
It's just like, this feels like something special. And again, I can't overstate. We had no idea what this match was going to look like. Like, there was so much anticipation built around it. I didn't know if Mayweather was going to try to actually wrestle, if this is going to basically be a boxing match. Like, so like the whole time everyone's coming out, like I'm on the edge of my seat because I'm like, this could either be the biggest clusterfuck in wrestling history or a miracle.
So the rules are you win by pinfall, submission, or knockout. There's no rounds, no disqualifications, no countouts. Mayweather has gloves on, but they're fingerless gloves, so like he is not disadvantaged in that way.
Right.
Big Show stalks Mayweather. Mayweather keeps, kind of sticking and moving, hits him with a few shots. One of the guys in Mayweather's posse goes to give him a drink from like his blinged out chalice, and Big Show knocks the guy out with a right hand.
That was I burst out laughing here. I burst out laughing when I first saw it.
There's a bunch of really funny spots in this match. Like, it's a serious match, but there's some great comedy in here, mostly involving Mayweather's posse.
You can really tell that this was planned out very smartly. Like that, like somebody put a lot of water time and
going flying as Big Show hits him, and he flies off the apron.
I don't know if his posse were actually his posse or if they were like indie wrestlers or what.
I'm sure they were indie guys because they get the shit kicked out of them.
Oh yeah, all this is, they're like the Mean Street posse of this match.
Big Show manages to get hands on Mayweather. He tries to stomp his hand, but Mayweather avoids it. Big Show just beats on Mayweather, and the crowd goes wild for it. He hits a huge side slam, which is the biggest pop of the match.
And like, I was genuinely surprised when I saw that, because that's that's not like a big bump, but that's a much bigger bump than I thought Mayweather was going to take.
Yeah. Mayweather and his crew try to walk out. Big Show chases them up the ramp and just stampedes through them like King Kong.
That was the best moment, like bowling pins going in every direction.
He drags Mayweather back to the ring. He goes to choke slam Mayweather. One of the guys from the posse hits him from behind with a chair. Big Show sells that, but he knocks the guy out. Mayweather gets the chair, hits Big Show with a series of chair shots. Big Show still recovers. He goozles Mayweather. Mayweather kicks him in the balls. Mayweather gets the chair again, hits 3 straight shots to the head. He gets brass knuckles from one of the guys in his crew, gets his glove off, gets the knuckles on, hits Show with a KO punch to the jaw, and Show can't answer the 10 count, and Mayweather wins. That was so much better than you would have expected it to be.
Like, they covered for the weaknesses inherent in this match so much, but this would not have been possible with, like, 2005 Big Show. No. Like, he just wouldn't have been able to do this. Like, he carries this. He's a star here. And, like, that ending is about the best possible ending you could possibly have. Like, if Floyd Mayweather's going to win,
yeah,
I don't like to see chair shots to the head, but, like, yeah. And he, like, tees off on Big Show.
Yeah, the chair was destroyed. Yeah, I mean, Big Show got beat by interference, multiple chair shots to the head, and then a brass knuckle right hand from a world champion boxer.
And like, Show did do an interview afterwards where he said that he had a talk with Mayweather's like, now look, when you get those brass knuckles on, if you fucking touch my chin with those, we're changing the ending of the match.
Yeah, he did not take that shot for real. That was worked.
Oh, can you just imagine if the Big Show just like fires up? It's like, nope, choke slam.
Yeah.
Not a damn thing Mayweather could have done about it.
And Mayweather's perfect record is beaten in the wrestling ring.
Oh God.
Somehow they don't count this match when they do Mayweather's record.
They might as well, right? Like, it's a win.
Do they count that the fight he had against the kickboxer in Japan? I don't know if that counted. They count that McGregor fight, and that was clearly a work.
Well, that's when they were just padding his shit just to get him to 50 so he could beat Marciano.
Yeah. Kim Kardashian announces the night's attendance, which is a new stadium record, and it's main event time, Edge versus Undertaker. Edge defends the World Heavyweight Championship. What do you make of the decision to put this on last?
I remember being stunned when I first saw that it was on last. SmackDown isn't doing super well at this point. This storyline is super hot, and Edge is white hot.
Yeah.
But I think it's just because they anticipated this being Michaels and Flair, and then they didn't want it. Yeah. And Orton, Cena, Triple H just isn't quite right for it, so it just kind of by
Orton
default.
Winning would have been a super flat finish.
Yeah, so just by default, this gets it, you know?
Yeah, and like they didn't know if Mayweather and Big Show were going to be able to deliver, so that couldn't go on last.
So there's one match on the show that you know is going to be good, and it's this one, so you put it on last.
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally Shawn and Flair would have done it, and I think they offered it to Flair, and he didn't want to upstage the guys who are still, in their primes, which, respect to him for that.
And I'm sure it's still a little bit of a reward for Edge, too, because, Edge has... This last year, Edge has resurrected SmackDown from the dead.
Yeah. Even as he missed several months with injuries, he is what makes SmackDown work. He is the engine.
We are deep into La Familia here.
So Undertaker won the world title the previous year by beating Batista. He had a rematch against Batista at Backlash in a last man standing match. They fought to a draw there when Batista speared him off the stage and neither guy could answer the count. Then they had another draw in a cage match on SmackDown. This rivalry with Batista was absolutely tremendous. They worked together so well. Every single one of these matches was awesome.
And I'm sure when the first match happened, they were like, okay, maybe that was just lightning in a bottle. And they just kept having matches, and they just kept fucking delivering. You could have watched these two wrestle forever.
So they went to a draw in the cage match when they both escaped the cage. They both, got out of the cage and touched the floor at the same time. Mark Henry returned from an injury and attacked Undertaker, laid him out, and then Edge showed up with his Money in the Bank contract that he had won from Ken Kennedy and cashed it in, speared Undertaker and beat him, pinned him to win the title. This was how they wrote Undertaker out because he had suffered a legitimate injury and needed to take some time off.
And this is where Edge had already gotten super successful with the Rated R Superstar thing and feuding with Cena, and that was great. But he finds the last piece with this ultimate opportunist thing.
Yeah.
This is the moment where it's anything Edge has to do to get the belt, Edge will fucking do it to get the belt.
Edge feuded with Batista for a while Undertaker was out. He kept, finding ways to beat Batista. And then he had to forfeit the title because he himself got hurt. He took a bad choke slam from Kane and I think tore his pec.
The SmackDown curse, man.
Yeah. Great Khali won the belt in a battle royal. Batista won it back from Khali a couple months after that. Undertaker returned from injury. Undertaker and Batista renewed their rivalry. Batista beat him at Cyber Sunday, and then they decided to settle things in a Hell in a Cell match at Survivor Series. Edge made a shocking return there. He was disguised as a cameraman for the whole match and showed up at the very end of it and attacked both guys and then put Batista on top of Undertaker to get the pin.
God damn.
Yeah, this was great. It was then revealed that Edge was banging Vicky Guerrero, who would become the general manager of SmackDown.
And this is the single greatest touch to this character.
Made people so mad at the time. And this was the ultimate work the Smarks moment.
They've already established that Edge, there's nothing Edge won't do to get and hold the belt.
Yeah.
And they established that Vicky has this kind of mean and vindictive side. And then they just put two and two together. And the idea that Eddie Guerrero's widow is a mega heel who Edge is banging.
She was so good at it. She was so, and the fact that she was so stilted and awkward on her promos just helped it because it just played into she has no idea what she's doing and Edge is manipulating her.
Oh yeah. And she just gets so evil to the point where she surpasses Edge in how evil she is and turns on Edge. Edge isn't the one who turns on her.
No, she finds out Edge is cheating on her with Chris. Who is it?
Crystal Marshall, yeah.
It is Crystal Marshall.
Oh, no,
that's
it's
right.
Alicia Fox. It's
Alicia Fox is the wedding planner, and she's still with the company to this day.
God damn, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like,
this is so good. The heat is just insane.
And the beautiful thing about it is it's not a stretch for anybody's character.
No.
Of course Edge would do this. What a fucking sleaze bag.
And like Vicky is
Vicky
lonely. She's lost her husband, and now this really studly, attractive young wrestler is into her. Like, how can she resist that?
And then like his evil just bleeds into her. And of course, Chavo, the sycophant, would just go along with it. And then he gets the Edge heads, two guys.
Oh my God, Hawkins and Ryder.
They find two guys in developmental who look exactly like Edge.
And then Bam Neely is there for some reason.
That doesn't last long. Just to push Vicky around in a wheelchair.
Somebody had to do that.
But just like, La Familia is such a genius stable. I've never seen heat like the heat that they would get for anything. You couldn't
even hear Vicky's promos. The boos were so loud.
And they just kept bleeding into that. Like, and all of her promos were so bad, and that just made it so much better.
Yeah, look, maybe some people are offended by this. I never took this as exploiting Eddie's death.
No.
That's what they're playing on, but the reality is, like, women are allowed to move on after their husbands die and date other people.
It's one of those things, too, where, like, they were going to keep Vicky on the payroll anyway, just to take care of Eddie's widow, which is a wonderful gesture. It really is. And, like, Vicky really wanted... And it wasn't Vicky who wanted to be on camera. Vince put her on camera.
Which she was terrible as a babyface.
And I don't... watch. Yeah, so honestly, having her be a babyface just because of Eddie's memory is far more offensive to me than having her be, like, a fully fleshed out character with her own wants and needs. Like, that's... And they don't invoke Eddie, really. It's not like Edge is constantly coming out being like, I'm fucking Eddie's widow.
No. That's implicit. It's good that they went with the subtle version there.
It's just they hit the right note all the way across. And what you get is like this woman with absolute power, the heel champion has her in his pocket. How can you beat that?
Let's take a little detour here. Do you remember Vicky's very last segment before she left WWE?
I don't think so off the top of my head.
This is very weird. She wrestled Stephanie, or she wrestled in some kind of mud match because Stephanie made her do it. And then she turned face by beating Stephanie up. And she got up out of the mud and did Eddie's dance while Eddie's music played and got a huge pop. And that was her send off. And it was the most oddly sweet ending for that character possible.
Because it was such a character. It wasn't who Vicky Guerrero actually was. It's amazing to me that she was not a natural performer. She'd never done anything like this. That she just found this character inside of herself, Yeah. Bless Vicky Guerrero. She crushed it in a way no one could have expected.
So Undertaker won an Elimination Chamber match to become the #1 contender, and here we are. Undertaker is out first with druids, fire, thunder, and lightning. As I mentioned, they've got the flames shooting off the boat, up all the way into the sky of the arena.
Imagine you're on the pyro boat. And you're like, well, here's the part where we shoot fire into the sky. Hope this doesn't go wrong.
Well, we'll talk about the pyro after this match, because that's its own story.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Edge comes out second. He's also got fireworks coming off the boat that go all the way up into the sky. Great entrance.
God, Edge's entrance is so fucking incredible and iconic when you shoot it right.
The music and the pyro and the pose.
Doesn't get any better.
Story of the match is Edge just has a counter for everything Taker tries.
That's the genius part of the Ultimate Opportunist character, too, is that he incorporates this into his style, which is just basically, he's smarter than you.
Yeah. And he can always take advantage of your mistakes.
Yeah, anything that he needs to do to get out of this match with the belt, that's what's going to happen. He does not give a shit. He does not care about his own dignity or the rules or anything.
Taker hits a huge no-hands planche out to the floor. He goes for old school, but Edge trips him, and Taker falls all the way to the floor, which is a nasty bump for anybody, but especially a guy Taker's size and age at this point.
He sure wasn't taking a lot of bumps like that.
Edge works on Taker's back for the next few minutes. Taker makes a comeback. Edge cuts it off with a big boot as Taker comes off the ropes. Should note the crowd very quiet for the early part of this match, but they win them over by the end.
I mean, it's an impossible, to be at the end of this show. This is the first time since 20 that I felt exhausted by the end of a WrestleMania, just because I've been so emotionally invested.
Yeah, and this was not that hot coming in, and there's probably a decent chunk of the audience that wasn't watching SmackDown at this point because it's on, I don't even know what channel, CW at this point,
right?
My TV, whatever. It was on Sci-Fi. I don't even remember what it's on at this point.
It might have been My Network TV. I don't know.
I think it's about to move to My Network TV, and that's when they make it. That's when they trade Triple H over there and really boost it. They put JR on there. So I think is it CW before that?
I think there's something in between.
Or is this when UPN's dying?
UPN's already dead.
Yeah.
So CW comes after UPN, but I could have sworn there was something in between. Keep talking, I'll look it up.
Taker goes for the choke slam. Edge counters it with a DDT. Taker comes back with a choke slam, but Edge kicks out. Taker goes for old school, but Edge crotches him. Edge hits a superplex. Taker sets up for the last ride, but Edge slips out and hits him with a neck breaker. Now Taker hits the last ride. Edge kicks out at 2. Taker goes for a big boot. He misses Edge and knocks out the ref. Edge grabs a camera. He hits Taker with it. He sets up for the tombstone. Taker counters that, hits his own tombstone, but there's no referee to make the count. This is where Charles Robinson makes his iconic sprint down the ramp. Who knew Charles Robinson had wheels like this?
Is this the most iconic moment by any referee? I mean, I'm sure there are others. I mean, Earl had a few, but
one of the first ones I think of, because he just flies down and the ramp is so long,
and he's slides all the way across the entire ring.
Yeah, this is perfectly executed.
Charles Robinson, secretly maybe the best ref in the history of wrestling. He's up there, and he's never had many iconic moments, but respect for little Nate.
That's a long 2 count, but Edge has had enough time that he recovers and kicks out.
And now they have the crowd. The crowd is over the top for this.
Hawkins and Ryder show up. Undertaker beats them both up and throws them out. He turns around and Edge nails him with the spear.
With stank on it.
That gets 1, 2, Taker kicks out. Edge is in agony, but he recovers. He sets up for another spear. Taker slowly rises to his feet, and Edge nails him with the spear. He's got him. He's going to break the streak.
I genuinely thought the streak was over.
Yeah. I thought this was it.
They got me with this one. And going into the match, I had never even considered it. But as the match was going on, I was like, wouldn't that... I think this would have been, other than what they did, maybe the second best idea. Because how much would that have added to Edge's ultimate opportunist deal?
The heat on Edge, if he had beaten Taker here, would have been nuts.
If he, pins him with his feet on the ropes to end the streak. Just, fuck you.
So Edge makes just one mistake. He takes 1 second to gloat here. There's just 1 second where he kind of sits up and he doesn't cover Taker and he just basks in the glory of this moment that he's going to beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. And that's all it takes for Taker to sit up and lock him in the Go-Go Plata.
The Go-Go Plata or Hell's Gate, which he is... I guess he was using that as far back as the Angle match, wasn't he?
I think that was a triangle choke, so very similar, but not
Okay,
quite
yeah.
the same hold. But yeah, he's only really started using this in the couple months before this, where it's become, and they don't have a name. I don't think they have a name for it yet. It's just like that hold he does that he's
Yeah.
been beating guys with.
And that's all she wrote for good old Edgy.
Yeah, Edge is trapped in the middle of the ring. He's trying to reach the ropes, which he almost can because he's so damn tall. He can almost get his legs on the rope, but can't do it. He has to tap out. Taker wins.
This is a triumph for Edge.
Yep.
Like, not a lot of people remember, but Edge got to main event a WrestleMania. Not
Yeah.
only that, but like he tears the house down. At a lesser WrestleMania, this is the
Yeah.
match.
Yeah. Shit, if this had happened at WrestleMania 22, clearly the match of the night.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's not his fault that Shawn Michaels exists.
Yeah.
And this is the first one where Batista was the first match where the Undertaker kind of establishes that like, oh, I'm great at wrestling now. But this is the first WrestleMania where he like kind of tears the house down conventionally, and then he just keeps doing that.
No, yeah. He is now in the midst of a stretch of some of the greatest matches ever in wrestling. Like these like 7 or 8 WrestleManias here are just unreal. Everything up until the Lesnar match.
And that's the funniest thing too, because in between he's having matches. Like he's still a member of the everyday roster here. Those matches aren't that great, but for some reason,
yeah. Well, it's just there's so much emotion with WrestleMania. This was the one night of the year we really cared who won because the streak meant so much.
that's true.
Taker does his celebration. They shoot off fireworks. This took an unfortunate turn as some of the fireworks malfunctioned and just shot like right into the crowd. You can kind of see it on camera.
Like 42 people go to the hospital.
Yeah, it's bad. Luckily, no one was killed. Just lots of people burned.
God. And it was like some kind of like rope that was part of like
Yeah.
the apparatus. Like it wasn't the fireworks themselves. Like it just like snaps off.
Yeah,
and
it was like
flies.
it's hard to describe. I think these were the fireworks that kind of like twist around the stadium when they shoot off.
Yeah.
And I think one of it, yeah, one thing just broke off and yeah, went very bad.
I mean, it's damn lucky it was the end of the show and not the middle, or they probably would have had to stop the show.
Yeah. But yeah, that's an unfortunate end to a great WrestleMania. One of the best ones they've ever done.
I don't think match-wise this is the best WrestleMania ever. I mean, it's pretty high up, but I don't think it's really there. But in terms of a show, in terms of watching it and the atmosphere and like the visuals, I can't overstate how much it matters that a set looks so original and cool. Like this one has a place in everyone's heart. And also, this is the WrestleMania that we had expected maybe the least of that surprised us pleasantly the most. This is in the middle of a stinky bad time in WWE.
Yeah.
And this show came out of fucking nowhere.
Yeah. No, not much else to say. It was a great show. I mean, I guess the one thing, what makes this, so these two WrestleManias both do, these 23 and 24 both do huge business on the backs of celebrities. You know, Trump was the draw at WrestleMania 23. Mayweather is the draw here at 24. Unlike, you know, Mr. T and Mike Tyson, they're not able to use these to like springboard into a boom period because they just don't have their Hulk Hogan. They don't have their Steve Austin. You know, they don't have anybody who's going to keep those fans who tuned in to see the celebrity around.
And also, celebrities just aren't celebrities in the same way anymore. Like, while Floyd Mayweather's a gigantic star, he doesn't carry the kind of cachet where like he has like millions of people like who are just going to follow him to whatever it is that he does and stay there. That's just because of the association. It's just not the same as it used to be. Like celebrities are great for a one night bump, but no celebrity has the staying power at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, just kind of a different world and media culture. But, you know, they'll try again with celebrities the next year with Mickey Rourke, and that will go to a very interesting place. Can't wait to cover that next year. But this brings our WrestleMania anthology for this year to an end. I mean, this was an incredible stretch of shows we covered here.
Yeah, if you had to pull out like one theme or like one observation from this particular block of shows, what do you think it is?
I think this is where WrestleMania becomes what we know today. The just massive, like 4 or 5 hour show with 5 main event matches. Like when you look at the WrestleManias before this, there's some really good ones. 17 was a great show, but like 17 really just had Rock and Austin, and it had a couple other big matches, but it's not the loaded cards we start getting in this period.
I think for me, these ones that we watched is literally just like the search for the next guy. Like for 5 consecutive years, we watched them try desperately, flail desperately to replace Austin and Rock. And it isn't really until basically the following year, 25, that I kind of feel like Cena fits comfortably into that role. Maybe not even till 26.
It's hard to say with Cena because I remember when they treated the Rock feud as if it legitimized him. I remember feeling like that was silly because he had already been the top guy for so many years. But kind of in hindsight, it makes more sense because I do think that's really when we as fans accepted him as the top guy, when he did that Rock feud and like more than held his own, like surpassed Rock.
And he had never really, like Triple H kind of half-assedly passed him the torch, and so did Michaels, but it just never really felt like he got canonized as the top guy until that feud, you know?
Yeah.
And it seemed like every WrestleMania he get kind of shunted aside for something else, and he was never made to feel like the most important person in this universe until The Rock came and bestowed it upon him.
Yeah. I think the other thing that really, stands out with these WrestleManias, we've touched on this a few times, is the reconnection with the past.
Yes, absolutely.
As they bring kind of all the legends back into the fold, Hogan and Flair, and they've beaten WCW, so now they feel comfortable referencing history again, and they own all of wrestling history. And like, this is a company now that it's I feel like it's matured and grown up as Vince has aged, and maybe he's starting to look back on the past with more nostalgia than he ever had before. Like, it's just a different tone, whereas the Attitude Era WrestleManias are very, like, new generation Attitude Era, or very, like, live in the moment, like, this is what matters, this time right now, these are the best. Now this company can look back a little bit, and it's like, history is influencing its current product.
And also just the degree to which it slows down. Like, when we covered the Attitude Era WrestleMania, it's like, there's storylines that are just outrageously fast, and there's constantly shit going on. And here, we're kind of going to deal with a storyline between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, which is basically going to last for 5 years. And, like, that starts next year. And, like, that's something that would have been utterly unthinkable in, like, 2002. Like, the idea that any storyline could last more than 3 months is nuts.
Yeah, this is definitely, I mean, the title reigns. I mean, we mentioned, like, now it's not that crazy that somebody can hold a belt for a year, whereas in the Attitude Era, like, 4 months was a long time for anybody to be a champion.
Yeah, they've successfully reprogrammed the product and reprogrammed the fans on what to expect. Like, this match between Undertaker and Edge never could have main evented a WrestleMania in 2000. Like, people would not have sat still for a 24-minute singles match that ends in a submission. It just wouldn't have happened.
No, there would have needed to be way more, like, interference. The McMahons would have had to be involved somehow. It would have had to be much more spectacular than this.
Yeah, the definition of what a WWE show and main event and WrestleMania has utterly changed in these 5 years that we've covered here. And it happens so subtly that you almost don't notice as you go. But here, in 2008, this fucking company looks nothing like it did in 1998. Nothing.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, so 2 years ago when we did this, we covered kind of the Hogan era. Then last year we did, the new generation and the Attitude Era. I don't know. This year, this was the Ruthless Aggression Era, and then I don't really know what we're into at this point. Is this still the Ruthless Aggression Era? Feels like not. They're starting to be, they're edging towards more of like the PG period, but they're not there yet, I guess.
I don't think there's really a PG era because I don't think that that's something that really stopped. I would hedge to call this. I think after he's retired and when we look back, we'll see this as the Cena era.
Yeah, that's what I've always said. Yeah, Cena era starts probably at like WrestleMania 22 when he beats Triple H, and he's unquestionably the top guy in the company.
And it basically goes all the way until Brock comes back, and then it's the Lesnar era.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably about right.
Yeah.
Whew. So yeah, that is a wrap for WrestleMania 24 and for this year's WrestleMania anthology. What an epic period of shows. We know this is a hard time. This show won't drop for about 2 weeks after 2 weeks after we record this, so we hope we're all still here in 2 weeks. But regardless, we're going to be here as long as we can, trying to entertain you guys. Hopefully we can take your mind off what's going on in the real world for just a little while we're doing this.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, the Lawcast will continue. We will be back with a lot more. We've got a lot of things to do after WrestleMania that I'm excited about. As always, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you again next time.